Hello friends, it's Chris Angel coming at you for another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us. And tonight we're talking about this pattern you may find yourself stuck in. I believe every entrepreneur at some point gets stuck here. And let me say this, you'll never not be here. Like there's always a moment in entrepreneurship, at least in my experience, 17 years in, where you're at a crossroads. You will always be at crossroads. There's never one crossroad and then you're done. There's always crossroad after crossroad after crossroad forever in your journey as a business owner. As someone in business for yourself, that's just part of the game. Partly because you keep having new experiences and you're evolving, but also because there is this thing called change. Change always happens. Things are never static. And so even if you figured out all the answers, even if you figured everything out about business, what's different is that the world changes. People change. The consumer's appetite changes. There's all sorts of change around you, and that change always brings you to a new crossroad. What's interesting, though, is that when you're new in the game, you don't think it's going to be that way. You think, and rightly so, in the beginning I'll have to learn. Sure, I have to learn. I'm gonna study some stuff. I'm gonna do some stuff. I'll take a course. I'll figure some stuff out. And at some point, I'll have it all figured out, and I won't have to do that anymore. I'll have it all figured out, and it won't be hard anymore. I'll have it all figured out, and I won't compare myself to anyone anymore. Whatever it is for you. You just think at some point you're going to turn a corner and it's just smooth sailing the rest of the time. And that is the myth. That's the myth. It doesn't happen that way, right? And so what happens is when you turn that, see, in the beginning, you can have enough expectation of like, oh, this might be hard. I'll just put my head down and go to work and get through it. And so you turn the corner on that first problem, on that first crossroads. You pick a path, you head down it, and you think you're done. But then you come to another one, and it's in the second one and beyond that you think to yourself, man, why am I here again? I didn't think I'd have to be here again. And this, friends, is where you start to sabotage yourselves. This is where you start to sabotage yourselves. You get to the second or further down the road crossroads, and you're like, wow, I thought I was done with this. I hate this. And you might say, I'm stupid. You might make it about you. You might compare yourself to other people and think like, well, there are other people doing what I'm doing. I got down the road and I thought this was going to be a really great idea, but then I went somewhere tonight and I saw that other people do the same thing I'm doing. And so then you think, well, then why does mine have any value if other people are doing it? Mine doesn't have any value. And you undermine and sabotage yourself that way. Maybe you get down the road, right, and you had a good burst in the beginning, but now you're tight financially. Some people think they're going to get past the first hurdle, and then they're just like the floodgates are going to open for the rest of their life, and then they're never going to go back to hard times financially. That's also not realistic. And so when you get tight financially, you can sabotage yourself by second-guessing the decision you made. Look, guys, the sabotaging is always about second-guessing the decision you made to take on this journey as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. You're like, I'm going to go into business for myself, and then the rest of your life, you second-guess it. That's sabotaging it. There is some wisdom in the old saying about burning your boats, right? What was I don't remember, was it Columbus or somebody else, like where they got there, Cortez, I can't remember. They got to the place and they burned the boats, and they had to make it work. Some of you haven't done that. You have not burned your boats yet. You've gone down the path of this little inkling, this little whisper of truth of, my soul really feels like it wants to do this thing. And so you started down the path of the thing. But then things got rocky, things got hard. You second-guessed yourself. You felt dumb. You saw somebody else doing what you do, whatever. And you didn't burn your boat, so you have a back door to something else. You're like, well, I don't like this anymore. So what are you going to do? Go back to the way it was? You know you can't do that because your soul is wanting more. Your soul wants more. What are you going to do? Go live your life back in the way that is a very shallow second to what you really could have had, what you really could have created. If you do that, you will have regret that's what's waiting for you. When you sabotage yourself and you choose the path that leads you back to the life you lived versus the path that leads you to expansion and what is new and what your soul is calling you to do, when you take the safe path back to the life of familiarity, you're setting yourself up for regret for the rest of your life, because you will always wonder, what could I have created with my life? What could I have done? So look, here's what you have to know. Change is going to come either way. It can be hard either way. Either path can be hard. If you take the path back to your familiar life, the path you left to pursue your soul's calling, you go back to the life you were familiar with, which has its own financial hardships, which has its own, things you get disenfranchised about. It has its own hardships. But you think because it's familiar, at least I know what's there. Because sometimes the unfamiliarity, the uncertainty of the new and expansion is more than you think you can handle. Which isn't true, by the way. But you get so in your head about it. Get out of your head and into your heart. If you take the path to expansion, you take the path to your soul's purpose, that too is going to have some hardships. That too might cause you some financial strain. That too might have you create some comparison, right? Both paths have hardship, but one path is done inside of your soul's calling and the other is done out of fear. One is done out of love. The other is done out of fear. So look, let's wind this down with a question, right? The question is always, when I get to a crossroads, I get to crossroads all the time. Like I said, they're always going to be there. When I get to a crossroads, the question I ask myself is, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? If you go back to life the way you knew it, the alternative is like more of what you came from. Hoping and praying. I hope it gets there. See, the thing about going into business for yourself, most people who go into business for themselves go into business because they want to take matters into their own hands. They don't want to be at the mercy of somebody else. They don't want to be at the mercy of a job they could lose. They don't want to be at the mercy of somebody else determining their income. They want to say what their income is. They want to create choice and freedom. That's why they go into business. That's why I went into business. So the alternative of me not going further down the road of expansion out of love for what's in my soul to create in the world, the alternative is to go back to the way it was and live my life in regret. And I'm unwilling to do that. I'm just not willing to do that. That question is so sobering. What is the alternative? So every time you find yourself at a crossroads, you're like, man, this sucks. I hate where I am right now. I can't believe this is where I'm at. How am I right here? And then you go, well, what would the alternative be? What's the alternative? I could go back to the way it was, and all the problems that come with that, knowing that I gave up on my vision, and I gave up on those I was meant to serve, and I gave up on my soul's calling so that I could have a different set of problems in something that feels familiar. Well, that sucks. And whenever you get to the moment where you're like, yep, that sucks, I'm not doing that, then you find the courage to keep going. And you keep going. And then you go some more. And then guess what? You hit another crossroads, and you get to that crossroads, and you say something bad about yourself, or you second guess your decision, or somebody calls you a name and you get offended or whatever, and then you go and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm done. And then you say, what's the alternative? And you get to sober up and come back to love and expansion, to live out your soul's calling and to serve the people you feel called to serve. Guys, that is what for us in this tribe who want to make a difference in the world, who want to make an impact, who are called to serve. We are messengers. This is the path of a messenger. This is the path of a messenger. So, the choice becomes really clear, doesn't it? When you ask what's the alternative, the choice becomes very clear. So, here's to you, right? Stepping into your soul's calling and what you feel like you're here on earth to do, okay? If you want to learn more about how I teach marketing so that you have a framework down these crossroads, so that when you get to crossroads, you actually have some perspective, right? I invite you to apply for my 6-week program, the Groundswell Method Intensive. The way to do that would be to go to groundswellmethod.com, watch the video, and on the last page of the video, there is an application. You fill out the application, it comes directly to me, and then you and I connect that way, okay? So go to groundswellmethod.com, watch the video, apply for the next upcoming Groundswell Method Intensive, and until tomorrow, here's to you finding courage at the crossroads.